Are you a businesswoman who is finding it challenging to get your ideas across and make a point? Welcome to Speakers Who Get Results with Elizabeth Bachman, a podcast dedicated to helping women get the visibility they want, whether making a speech or talking in a meeting. Every week, get valuable lessons from Elizabeth or learn from her roundtable conversations with experts and speakers on how to make a difference, not just a point. On to the show with your host, Elizabeth Bachman.
Hello, and welcome to Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your hostess and an international opera director and presentation skills trainer. And today I'd like to talk about how to get booked as a speaker, finding the right engagements for you. This applies to you if you are speaking to sell your services, if you're speaking to get people to hire your company, but it also applies to you if you're speaking for visibility, if you're speaking to make impact, because the best message in the world does you no good if you have no place to give it. So let's talk about how we're going to do this. The problem is, a problem I see a lot, is that presenting, public speaking is one of the best ways to get recognition. And it's one of the best ways to get people to know about you, to listen to you, to trust you, to like you, and then later decide to either hire you or promote you, maybe give you a seat on a corporate board. All of this comes from public speaking. And yet, I'm amazed how many people resist it. Frankly, I get about 75% of my business from speaking live or virtually, or like here on this podcast. It's how we hear about people who have interesting things to say, and then we follow them. Speaking can reach the people you want to reach in a much more powerful way than any sort of digital communication or social media. Social media is great. Digital communication is wonderful. But hearing people speak, hearing people talk about what they're passionate about is really what's going to make the difference, make you hear them. And yet, too many people forget. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to get there. So this is what I do. This is a piece of what I do with my clients. I work with experienced speakers who are out there. They know what they want to say, but they also know that they can be better. They need to get better results. They need to tweak things. I mean, my business is called Strategic Speaking for Results, of course. So they know they want to get there, and part of it is let's figure out where to get you booked and where to talk. One of the great ways to think about this is why, who, where, what, and how. Why is, why should you be out there speaking at all? And I just spoke about that. Who needs to hear you? Who do you want to reach? Who is your ideal audience? Where do you find them? What do you say? And then, of course, how to get it done. Those are the 5 ones. So first of all, why be out there speaking? If you have a message, if you have something you're passionate about, if you have expertise, I'm going to invite you for a minute to close your eyes and just imagine yourself in front of a room of the people you really want to reach. Who are they? What are they doing? And imagine that you're talking to them and they're looking up at you and they're excited. Their eyes are lit up, they're leaning in, and you're rocking it. You're up there, you're saying everything you want to say. You make a joke, and it's as if you just made it up. Of course, you practiced it, but you've just made it up, and they laugh, And when it finishes, they rise to their feet in a standing ovation. And as you walk off the stage away from the microphone, there's a crowd of people who are begging to know you, begging to talk about you. Just feel that. Feel that energy. Feel that feeling. Own that feeling. This is the why. This is the why. You're reaching people, they're listening, and they're actually paying attention to what you have to say. I learned about the value of presenting by working with some of the greatest in the world. I'm an international opera director, and I spent 30 years helping people be fabulous on stage. I worked with people like Luciano Pavarotti and Placido Domingo, and I watched what they did, the tools and the techniques that they used. And I also watched how they got to be visible, what they did to improve their personal brands so that they would be in demand. And then the work, the structure it took to get them on the stages of the world. Well, as a speaker, you might not be at La Scala or the Met, but finding places to speak, finding the right places to speak is the same sort of structure. So we talked about why you want to do this. The next question is who? Who do you want to speak to? Who needs to hear what you have to say? You can't just say everybody. That's like the old joke of the dermatologist when they say, who's your ideal client? And they said, well, anybody with skin. That doesn't work. But if you decide who needs to reach you, who needs to pay attention to you, who's going to be able to help you, who do you want to reach, that's important. I know of a triathlete who was a massage therapist. It was a massage therapist first. He was also a triathlete. And he went as a massage therapist, he was charging the bare minimum. It was really hard to fill his calendar. But when he billed himself as, he made a deal with a local gym, and he billed himself as the massage therapist for triathletes, suddenly his calendar was full. He was charging twice as much. The gym was happy because they had a great service to do. He was worried that he was excluding other people, excluding the other people he could help. But, by choosing a niche, choosing a target audience, choosing a target market, if you will, it got enough people in the door that he didn't need to deal with other people. And if he needed the people who weren't triathletes, he could do that. They'd still come to him, but they weren't the people he was marketing to. So when you think about why you need to speak, what's your message? What can you talk about? What should you talk about? Then think about who needs to hear it. What result do you want to get? If you're doing a speech and you want people to listen, what's the result? My client Gina wrote a book, and she wrote a great book. It was a novelization of her family history. And she had some things set up, or her agent had set up a few things around the launch, a few gigs around the launch of the book. But once those were over, she didn't know how to get other people. Now, this book took place during World War I and World War II, especially during the Holocaust. So she started aiming for groups of people who were interested in history, people who were talking about the Holocaust, Jewish groups. She wasn't Jewish, but she had this great book with this great story about World War II. And once she chose that, then she started selling books like crazy. She went from a garage full of boxes that she couldn't get rid of to needing to order a second printing. Now she speaks 3 or 4 times a month. The people who hear her recommend her to other people. It's because she chose a niche. She chose a target market that it all worked for her. So once you know why you want to speak, what results you want to get, and who needs to hear you, where do you find them? Well, the key is start with who you know. Now, I know my dad told me this when I was 25 years old, and I thought, ugh, that can't possibly be true. There's nobody in my circle who can help me. But he was right. They talk about the circle of influence, the circle of people you know. Hate it when he's right, but indeed he was. You start off with who do you know? Who knows you? And who's in your target audience or your ideal clients, your ideal listeners? Who do you know that you already work with, who already knows how brilliant you are, who can then help you to find other groups? Reach out to the people who already know you and say, people like you are exactly the kind of people I'd like to have hear my message. I'd like to talk to groups like this. We met at such and such a group. Are there any other groups that you know that might be good? Any other groups that you go to that I might not know that would be good places for you? This is a great way to do this. Start with who you know, and then start with who they know, and work your way out. Another way to do it is look at conferences and conventions that have the people you want to reach. Potential customers, potential allies, who are people who could help you get where you want to get. Try to make them at least one group, one level removed, not two levels removed. So maybe not someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows someone. For conferences, you want to focus on who are the people who you really want to have hear you, and how do you find them? Where do they gather? This is something I talk about a lot with my clients, and if you're interested, you can reach out to me through this podcast, through this website, and we can talk a little bit more about this. It's sometimes hard to figure out all on your own. So get somebody who can help you brainstorm around it. And then, once you've figured out who and where, make a list, make a spreadsheet, put it in your customer relation management. Once you've figured that out, then how do you reach them? What do you say? One of the great phrases I always liked is, if you're calling someone yourself, is to call up and say, hey, I've heard such great things about your group, or maybe Julie told me about your group. She said it would be a great place. I should pay attention to you. And then say, who is it who decides who the speakers are? Now, often, if you're working with a group of people who are interested in something, there's a volunteer who's putting that together. So if you can come up with if you can be a good resource for the volunteer, great, they'll be happy. If it's a professional, if it's a meeting planner, then you really want to cultivate that meeting planner, cultivate that strategy. There's a different strategy for that, and we talk about that elsewhere on this podcast. So take a look at the interviews with meeting planners. I'm mostly talking about those of us who are doing it for themselves. Reach out to somebody. If you want to speak to a company and you have to find out who it is who books the speakers for, say, a lunch and learn or a company conference, do it again. Say, I'm calling to find out who it is who books the speakers, because there might be a secretary answering or a gatekeeper. So you have to get to it, who it is who makes the decision. The secretary won't know, so the secretary will have to connect you to the decision maker. It takes research. It takes doing some background and doing some studying, but it is so worth it. Nowadays, it's so much easier now that we have the internet. There's a lot you can find out. If it's a conference, quite often they'll put up a request for proposal. So look for conferences and look for how to become a speaker. Then do your research about the conference. Who's there? Are they going to be receptive to your message? And then make the application. So we've talked about why you want to speak. It's to get you visibility, or to get you clients, or to get people to pay attention to you, to hire you. Who needs to hear it? Who are the people you really want to talk to? Where to find them? What to say? And there's a lot more detail around that, about what to say, but that's just a beginning. And then the question is how to get it done. Yes, you can join a speaker bureau, but speaker bureaus only really work for people who are already known. So great, if you're out there and you're speaking so much that you don't have time to manage your speaking engagements, hire somebody to do that. Or you could find an assistant who you could pay to look for ideas, to look for places for you. There are some great resources for that. If you're interested, just contact me. However, that doesn't necessarily make you make the phone call. So having someone make an initial phone call is fine. You do get what you pay for. So don't hire somebody offshore who doesn't really speak English well and doesn't really know how to talk about what you do, doesn't know what you do. I've tried that many times. It's never really worked. There are some people who do it very well, but there are a lot of people who offer that service and do it badly. So I would invest the time and the money. If you're going to hire somebody to help you, invest the time and the money to get someone who's really about selling speakers, who really knows what they're doing. Or if you're doing it yourself, then the best way I have found is what I call the fabulous friend system. The fabulous friend system is to hook up with somebody who's also looking to book speaking gigs. Find a partner and dedicate at least an hour a week. There are people who do an hour a day for 1 week out of the month, but most of us are doing so many other things. Make sure that you have at least 60 to 90 minutes every week and make it sacred. Don't blow it off for something else. You have to do the work to get the speaking engagements. The more you're out there, the more you're visible, the more people will start asking you. But believe me, you have to do the work at first to get yourself established. There's no shortcut. You just have to do it. The cool way to do it is to have a friend, have a partner who's somebody whose work you approve, who does similar sort of thing that you do, but not the same audience, not exactly the same. And become each other's assistant. By that, I mean you meet once a week, you give each other the list of the places to call, you work out what your script will be, and then once a week you meet, you declare your intentions, and then hang up and make calls on each other's behalf. You know how it's so much easier to brag about somebody else? Make the calls on someone else's behalf, and you call and you say, hello, I am working for Simon here, and my name's Elizabeth, I'm working for Simon, he's an amazing speaker, you've got to have him come and speak to your group. How can I set this up? And meanwhile, Simon is calling for me and saying, yes, Elizabeth Bachman, she's the speaker about how to speak for impact. She's the presenter that you want to hire. Call for somebody else. Call and brag about them. Be excited about them. The unofficial name for this system is, it's always easier to do the dishes at someone else's house, you know? So team up with your friend, make a commitment to do this for at least 3 months, 1 day a week, make the choice, make the commitment, and you will be able to, and you will have results. I did a course called 5 Gigs in 5 Weeks a couple years ago, and it really worked. They spent 5 weeks doing it. They learned the system. And then of the group, 6 of them, I believe, are still talking 2 years later. They're still doing this 2 years later, once a week. They call and they make bookings for each other. So remember, if you have a message to give, if you have a reason, if you have a good why, then get out there, speak, position yourself right, be in the right places for you, the places that will really benefit you, because the best message in the world does nobody any good if nobody hears it. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host. If you're interested in learning more about this, you can go to my free assessment. It takes about 5 minutes, and go to www.speakforresultsquiz.com. That's speakforresultsquiz.com, and you can take the 5-minute assessment that will help you see where your speaking skills, your presenting skills are strong, and if you know where to get the right speaking gigs, and where maybe you could use a little help to support it. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, and the joy of my life is helping people get up on the right stages, virtual or live, and to shine and to get results. If you enjoyed this, please share our podcast. Please give us good reviews, and I'll see you on the next one.
We have just concluded another great episode of Speakers Who Get Results with your host, Elizabeth Bachman. If you got value from today's episode, please feel free to share us with your friends and colleagues. You may also visit elizabethbachman.com for additional resources. Be sure to tune in every week for new episodes, and thanks for tuning in.